Hi, everybody. I'm Steve Smith. I'm the editorial director of events here at MediaPost. Welcome. I am happy to have with us Jennie Peelle. And for my whole life, I've been wanting to say, good afternoon, Mrs. Peelle.
Oh, excellent.
And if you want a really great story, by the way, hit up Jennie and ask her why her last name is spelled with 2 E's and 2 L's. It's one of the better stories I've heard.
It is a
doozy. You know,
story.
and because it involves Long Island Quakers, by the way, which is going to grab you anyway. She's the senior director of media strategy at Walgreens. I have to confess, I am a little impartial here, less than impartial here, because I am a longtime customer of Walgreens. My wife has more rewards points than I care to mention.
Thank you so much.
I am double vaxxed and boosted, all because they poached me from one of their major competitors with the very program we're going to talk about now, which is the ways they've been learning through the pandemic to personalize at scale. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Jennie, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
We have a lot to talk about, by the way, and one of the things we're going to do with this session is kick us off and start getting into it, but we've added a roundtable at the end of the morning so that you can engage with Jennie and also share some of your thoughts about personalization at scale. So we're going to continue this in the roundtable afterwards. Let's start, first of all, with how we've heard a lot about customer experience. We're going to keep hearing about customer experience. I think Walgreens' customer experience has got to be a lot different from Daz's customer experience. Tell me how you define this within the context of the Walgreens brand.
Absolutely. Honestly, I think I'm going to echo a lot of what Daz shared, as I think ultimately customer experience is about being relevant to more customers with deeper relevance that ultimately helps you grow the business. And for us, that has taken shape with kind of 2 key pillars. One is this notion of deeply human insights and really understanding our customers. The other is building the capability set to respond to those deeply human insights about their needs in a really one-to-one manner. And if you'll let me, I can take you through a couple of slides about how we've thought about that. So I think it comes to life a little bit differently, but I think I'll echo a lot of the themes that Daz said. For us, everything, when we're talking about customer experience and customer first, it all comes back to understanding customers. Who are our target customers? Why are they important? What are their needs? And how do we ultimately best serve them? And honestly, I don't know that this is a new idea. What I think is incredibly new is that it's really about the one-to-one understanding of needs, which means understanding thousands upon thousands, maybe even millions of unique needs, and being able to respond to them. And that, to me, is really where the newness of customer experience comes into play. And for us, that has meant that we really need to invest in what I'm gonna call like our customer stack. So a set of personalization capabilities that allow us to do just that. And that's everything from unified customer identity, omni-channel orchestration, MarTech and a personalization engine, and digital experiences. But for us, it's about understanding those thousands of needs and being able to respond to them in the most relevant way possible.
Now, this is why we're doing a roundtable, because there's a lot to talk about here. Let's drill into the first one, though, because this is one that is being as a challenge for almost every brand, retail and not, which is unifying identity, gathering all that data, because in that first slide, the first 3 elements all require data. So how are you coming at the problem of a unified customer identity and applying it across these channels?
Absolutely. Our unified customer identity starts with My Walgreens. It's our loyalty program. It is the center point for how we create custom experiences for our customers and ultimately unlock all the value that Walgreens has to offer them. It is a digital portal that connects all of our platforms, whether that's our site, our app, our store, and allows our customers to tap into flexible healthcare services, prescription services, quick and easy order fulfillment, payment flexibility, and so much more. So it is truly the starting point for us, and we've seen amazing response, which really lets us know that this is how our customers want to engage. It also is really exciting because it powers the Walgreens Identity Network, which is our comprehensive data set to extend one-to-one reach. And this allows us to understand our customer on multiple dimensions and connect with them based on those dimensions. And this has truly become the starting point for how we connect in a one-to-one basis with our customers in media, it is also the core of the Walgreens advertising group and the work that we do to enable those same one-to-one connections for our brand partners as well.
Are they, is a lot of this passive data connection once they sort of opt in to My Walgreens, you're just collecting all that data? Is there any zero-party data going on? How are you actually going about the harvesting?
It's a combination of both. So a lot of what we do is observe our customers' behaviors with us. We also really nurture them to deepen that relationship. So we definitely have a dual strategy there.
How do you up front, what's been one of the most compelling ways to get them to sign in and to join this, to be part of this sort of dashboard?
Absolutely. So I think what they're really joining is My Walgreens. And I think the key differentiator for them there is the personalized experience. So we relaunched that program a year ago, and it allows them to access so much more, and for us to be so much more relevant to them. It also is really the starting point for omni-channel orchestration in terms of how they shop and where they want to shop. So for us, that is really the differentiator, and we continue to unlock new benefits that really continue to make that relationship worthwhile, so that they want to participate, they want to take action with us, and they want to share more information with us because we're able to better serve them as a result. And I think it always goes back to, at the end, how are we serving them? Mm-hmm. And so yes, like, wonderful that we can observe their behavior with us and communicate, of course, in a highly privacy compliant and respectful manner, but it comes back to us being able to serve them better because we know more.
So unlike a lot of other brands that I've covered for the last 2 years, Walgreens has a pivot story. We've heard a lot of pivot stories. Most pivot stories, especially retail, are we really had to ramp up our digital presence. We really had to start thinking about e-commerce. In your case, you had a vaccine program that hyper-accelerated what you were doing. These initial plans, many of which had already been laid in place, suddenly got supercharged by the need to do vaccinations, which required a lot of very one-to-one marketing. Having been the target of it, I know this. Tell us about how what are the key things that you got from working on the vaccination program during the pandemic that really helped drive this?
Absolutely. What I think was so exciting for us with the vaccine program is it actually let us unleash some of our capabilities in a new way. So just to give a little bit of context on the vaccines, there was a lot of complexity. This was an unprecedented event for humanity and for us. And with that, we had very little time. We had 5 months to drive initial vaccine appointments. There was tremendous consumer confusion and doubt. We heard at the time we launched this work, 60% of consumers did not feel like they had enough information to feel confident. They did not know where or how to get a shot. And there was operational complexity with supply, logistics, especially at the local level. So it was kind of, in the context of all that complexity, we had an incredibly interesting challenge of, like, how do you predict what has never happened before? How do you identify the right customer need states so you can best serve them? And I have a little video. If we want to go to that, we can show to talk about how we did that, and then we can dig in a little more.
For over 120 years, Walgreens has been building deep bonds and improving the well-being of our customers and patients. Today, Walgreens Advertising Group is deepening those bonds and helping its suppliers meet those customers whenever and wherever through an advertising ecosystem that's more human, more integrated, and more open. Through people-based first-party audience data and unique media products, Walgreens Advertising Group can activate truly human insights and tailor messaging in real time.
Talk a little bit more about it.
One of the things, and actually this next slide gets into it, I think. Yeah. One of the real challenges you had is you had to segment your user base in completely different ways. Suddenly we're starting to talk about people who are vaccine hesitant versus people who are anti-vax versus people who just need a little more education or hand-holding. So you were actually thinking about your customer base and having to segment them in a set of attitudes and moods that you really can't anticipate. So tell me how you handled that, because that's an amazing feat, I think.
It was really exciting, and we're very proud of it. So I would say it was approaching segmentation entirely differently, but it started in the same place that we always start, which is going back to consumer insights. So we spent a lot of time digging into consumer insights, and what started to emerge out of that was kind of two key dimensions that really drove customer need states. So one was this idea of risk or vulnerability, how vulnerable are you? And the other was this idea of demand for the vaccine or hesitancy. And just to kind of play that out in a more human sense, someone who may be low risk, low hesitancy is vaccine ready. They were looking for a shot. They may just need to know like where, when, and how. Someone who is high risk and high hesitancy is going to need much deeper communication. They're going to need to be inspired and educated and helped to move through their vaccine journey. So a lot of our insight work helped us unearth these unique dimensions. It then came to the great challenge of, okay, how do we predict and activate on these dimensions? And that's where I think we were almost in a way the most excited about the work. Is what this led us to was really an advanced data modeling solution that helped us identify demand and vulnerability signals in the environment and respond to them in a very nuanced way. So what we did is we took in demand and vulnerability signals from a whole host of different sources. We clustered them at the DMA level so we could be incredibly locally relevant. We then scored them for propensity and aligned them to Walgreens trade areas around our stores, which ultimately gave us what we call a vaccine readiness index or model that told us what need state is that customer likely to be in so that we can deliver them the most relevant message, whether that is a simple convenience message of here is how to go and get your vaccine, or if it was, wow, we really need to talk you through and educate you about this. So it allowed us to be incredibly relevant to them. It also allowed us to be really adaptable to the changing situation. So I think one of the dimensions that was so interesting about hesitancy and demand is that the same person might change where they are over time. So we actually built this work to pull in 35 different streams of demand signals. It looked at 135 different attributes, and it updated weekly so that we could move with our customers as their need states change and deliver the right message, even if that dynamically evolved over time.
So you were also monitoring their behaviors to then, and those were sending signals as to how their phases were changing. Are there particular learnings that you got out of this, just about your customer base? Because you're talking about a massive number of signals, and you're trying to glean from it a set of attitudes and postures and readiness that we've never had to really predict before.
Yep.
And we're still obviously pretty bad at it. So we might want to lend this engine out to a few people in government. But tell us a little bit about what you learned about your customers as a result of this.
Yeah, I think we really learned to lean even harder into the customer first strategy we had. So I think what was so interesting about this work is it gave us the perfect opportunity to action strategies we'd already had germinating and in our minds, whether that is thinking differently about the data we leverage to speak to existing customers versus net new. We can leverage a lot of our first-party data to nurture that relationship with existing customers. This actually gave us an engine to reach out to net new, but in a way that was far more personalized and hence we hope far more relevant to them than it would be if we had been kind of shooting blind, as we often are in those cases. So I think the opportunity to actually lean into the customer first strategy was one of the biggest learnings, and we saw tremendous response to it. So we saw the response come back, whether it was from our existing customers or from net new, that indicated like we were more relevant to them because of this type of work and because of our ability to predict what they might need at that moment.
So you were using this to not only help with your CRM, but you were also using it and applying it into your media buying and your targeting. Tell us a little bit about that piece, how you were actually converting this into customer acquisition. What were the kinds of things that you were able to do on the media side that could be this targeted?
Yeah, we actually really focused this work on the paid media side. We obviously have a lot of historical knowledge around our customers, and that powered a lot of our CRM efforts, which is really about deepening their relationship with us. What this really let us do was reach out to net new customers or lesser engaged customers that may not be as in-depth with our brand, and to communicate with them at that same one-to-one level of knowledge. And obviously there's a layer of prediction that happens here, but the ability to think about the same type of strategy for a group that you may not have all of that information in-house was really powerful for us in extending to a much wider group that needed the vaccine to get the country moving again.
So what kind of media did that look like? What kind of messaging? Give us like maybe a couple of
Yeah, so I can show you some of the messaging of how this came to life. It came to life as thousands upon thousands of different messages. A lot of this was focused in digital channels, so came to life across a full suite of digital channels, whether that was display, OLV, social, et cetera. But what I think it really unlocked for us was, again, that ability to just be much more relevant of, we can predict that you need a convenience message versus you really need inspiration and education to feel confident and move forward. And that's what it ultimately unlocked, was that same level of personalization, but for something that had never happened before and had never been predicted before.
And I really think it's important to mention the distinction between this and what digital marketing has been doing for the last 20 years. This is not behavioral, this is attitudinal. This is getting at the why that everybody's been asking about for a lot of years. Is if we start building models that actually can take a whole variety of signals that maybe we never considered before and start to understand what the actual sets of attitudes are that are driving behaviors, not just behaviors themselves. That's what this seems to be getting.
Yeah, what I think this unlocked differently for us is, I think so much heritage of audience-based work has kind of been based on an attribute. Like, I see an attribute and I'm gonna assume your need state based on that, and it's based on the notion of there being like consistent and repeatable patterns. Right. What this unlocked for us, and I think the potential of this that we see far beyond just this program, was the ability to fire up new connections. So we didn't need that consistent, repeatable pattern. We could start to say, I am seeing attributes that I think indicate to me that you need this message. And I think it allowed us to do that in a much more predictive way that fires up new connections that haven't been repeatable, and which was so critical to this work where there was nothing to repeat. I think it also was super exciting for us was the way that this allowed us to change over time incredibly quickly and seamlessly. So this model and this work were built for the original vaccine rollout. Obviously, since then, we've had boosters, we've had pediatrics. While that is tremendous change in the human beings, the attributes and the demographics of those groups, the need states have actually remained kind of consistent. Those same dimensions are at play. And so this allowed us to continue to find those right need states and message them accordingly and be incredibly adaptable even as the situation continues to unfold.
So this is very new, but it still raises some classic questions. Did this alter your media strategy? Not just in terms of messaging, but media channels and choices. Was it also changing just the overall buy and asset allocation?
It did to some extent. I think we have had a very full funnel omni-channel media strategy with a very heavy focus on digital. So it did not change that, but I think this really leaned us even further into digital channels where we could activate this. So while there were mass channels that we leveraged for this body of work because it was a mass need we were solving for, it really continued to grow our focus in digital. I also think it really showed us the possibility of what digital could return for us on an enterprise omni-channel perspective as well. So I think it continues to reinforce the trajectory we have been on of becoming more and more digitized because we can be more audience-led and more relevant there.
When you're segmenting the audience this way and you're starting to target attitudes and moods and propensities, does it change your KPIs? I mean, do you need to measure this differently to know whether you're having an impact? Because some of this could be much long. Each of these groups may be responding on much different timelines.
Yes, and I think this program was really interesting. The KPIs look a little different, period, because what we were trying to accomplish looked a little bit different. And I think, as was shared in the last panel, like to some extent, we are all working with the data that is available to us in each channel, and we live that every day. So I think what this really forced us to do was to get really focused on the KPIs that we were going to be looking at and be willing to give longer time frames for some of those audiences that we knew were going to take longer. And I think it set us on the path of really thinking about the time window of conversion. So it isn't about brand work, it isn't about performance work, it's all performance work, but the time horizon that we're looking for to see that, I'm gonna put conversion in air quotes, but to see a person move through this journey is gonna be shorter for some and longer for others, and it's really about how we continue to see their progress. And I think that's what we looked for, holding space for those audiences we knew would take more time.
Actually, another question occurs to me as you're talking about that. I'm curious about data deprecation. does this system, is this very dependent on third-party data? Does it increase your dependence on it or decrease it? Does this help? Does sort of the AI-driven predictive models actually help overcome the data deprecation problem?
So this was heavily third-party data-driven for this particular piece of the work. I think because of the locations where we were sourcing data from, it looks different. It wasn't necessarily traditional digital activity behaviors that we were looking for. We were pulling in data sources around health information, around rates of vaccinations, around spikes in actual cases of COVID. So the sources were a little bit different that I think maybe made the deprecation issues less of a concern for us. I think strategically, we really believe in the power of first party and third party together, and the capability that that unlocks in terms of being able to leverage what we know about our own customers, but also extend that net and really try to be more relevant even to those who may not be as deeply engaged with us.
Let's see, Lisa, do we have time for a question? Okay, let's go.
Have any questions for Lisa? Jenny? Okay, hold on, let me just. I forgot my wipes. There you go.
And that guy looks kind of suspicious to begin with. By the way.
Get the extra duty wipes.
I'm like, did you save any churros for me?
No, I ate them all. This was just great. I got to tell you, that advanced data modeling slide just gave me very happy feelings. I'm curious,
This is the kind of crowd that is a slide like that gives you happy feelings.
I'm scared for us.
Yeah.
A little scared for us.
Did you have all the tech in place before COVID? Did you have to stand up a CDP? Did you have all of that in place? And was there any special tech that just became like the all-star during all this that you could share with us?
Yeah, I would say much like many organizations, we are on a continuous journey around continuing to build and optimize our tech stack. I will say we were in a really solid position to activate this work. So we didn't necessarily need to stand up a new piece of technology. I really think this was in ensuring that the data could be piped into our existing capabilities. So that was probably the biggest piece for us, but much like the measurement situation where we are all kind of managing through what will be a continuous evolution and journey, we are on very much the same one from a tech standpoint, but I think we were very lucky that we had invested heavily in those capabilities before this moment arose, and this allowed us a great opportunity to lean in and execute upon them.
Great, and as we said, Jenny will be at the round table, so any more questions, you can ask her then. Otherwise,
Yeah, in the round table, we're going to talk about the radical cultural shift that something like this takes internally at a company the size of Walgreens.
And maybe I'll show you the actual COVID video.
Oh, there you go.
We can only hope.
Run that up.
Well, thank you, Jenny, and thank you,
Okay.
Steve.
Thank you.